Conservatives are happy for all the help they can get against mind-numbing leftist ideological craziness. But certain kinds of help are so tainted that they create more harm than useful results. Conservatives needed fresh ideas and faces who command respect and attract a broad spectrum of the population, but what they got was a badly aged showbiz and real estate mogul called Trump and the fad we call the alt-right or new right. Nothing about it was really new or alternative. Hating Muslims and obsessing over Muslim extremism, we had that for almost the entire Bush administration. Hating the left and obsessing over communist subversion, we had that all Cold War long. The idea of a pure white ethno-state and absolutist white rule, that sounds like old school colonial style British psychopathic ideas. The idea that the Russian regime will come to the rescue, be a global leader and role model, sounds like what Western communists believed until the Soviet Union collapsed. Classic conspiracy media like the book by Gary Allen at least offered some new insight. In the past, rich families can afford to buy off the entire political sphere and the media to keep the population riled up and busy tearing each other apart. And that basic principle is unfortunately very real, but fortunately easy to understand. While the alt-right obsesses over the mogul George Soros, who is handing out money to leftists like candy but does not make decisions, the alt-right gets very uncomfortable when people ask about the billionaire donors of the right-wing sector, such as the Mercer family, the Shillmans, or the Rosenwalds. And we put up the graphics, the graphic here on eng.recenter.com. So we see people like Robert Spencer, Tommy Robinson, Jack Posobiec, Laura Loomer, and on and on and on. Now, some conspiracy buffs trace these connections and obsess over the fact that these billionaires are Jewish and well-connected. Some very elitist Zionists, not your average Jew who is just happy that Israel exists and can protect itself. No, we're talking about heavy hitters like Mr. Shillman, Mr. Mercer, and Mrs. Rosenwald. Usually, conspiracy buffs believe the myth that a tiny little Jewish banking family called Rothschild managed to steal the British Empire unmolested, when in reality, the high nobility like Hessen-Kassel built the Rothschilds slowly and methodically as puppets to draw attention away from the royal families. The people were supposed to believe the fairy tale that 5 little brothers, whose father had to live in a Frankfurt ghetto, could become hotshot leaders of the banking world, or even the new quasi-kings of a new capitalist world order. European kings, as far back as the 1300s and 1400s, used Jewish middlemen to divert the population's anger, envy, and mistrust. And in that process, you also saw a lot of misinformation, a lot of propaganda campaigns. And this situation still is, that situation is still ongoing. It's not just Jewish billionaires who pump money into the alt-right. And it's not just a simple ploy to get right-wingers away from anti-Semitism and towards Islamophobia. The shadowy club Council for National Policy is a network where rich and influential folks find right-wing groups and individuals to put money into them. The spectrum ranges from mainline Republican groups to shock jocks like David Duke and even the early conspiracy media of the John Birch Society, which heavily influenced the following waves of conspiracy media. Now, not every CNP member is automatically and consciously part of a conspiracy. It can be assumed that many bona fide members are simply watched and indirectly steered. It's a matter of careers and offers and that sort of thing. Steve Bannon is just one of several members who overlapped or overlap with the Trump administration, and sources tell us that the council was instrumental in selling Trump to conservatives, even though Trump didn't have any conservative credentials, just tweets. There were other Republican politicians and candidates who spent many, many years working towards these conservative credentials, traveling the country, speaking to crowds, and listening to spin doctors about how to become a household name, how to make the evangelicals happy. Breitbart may have fallen out of favor and Bannon might be out of the White House, but the elitist circles have enough money to keep Trumpism and the alt-right going. Stars like Milo can be built up, and when they fall and they become a problem, new stars can be created very quickly or can be adapted. Which brings me to InfoWars and Alex Jones. Back when InfoWars did a solid job dismantling the lies of the Bush administration and faux fake conservatism, some conspiracy buffs were disappointed and angry that Jones did not obsess over Jews, and followed that up with the standard generic accusation that Jones must be in league with the blood-drenching Jew Zionist conspiracy. But no real evidence. So Jones's ex-wife has some Jewish ancestor? That's incredibly boring. Alex Jones had some Jewish employees over the years. Oh, please. Nowadays, InfoWars has morphed into a hybrid, retaining some classic conspiracy credentials, but largely adopting the pillars of alt-right ideology. You look at InfoWars these days, and you would hardly know it's the website of the supposed leading conspiracy theorist of America. Almost all you will find there is Trump advertisements, excuses for Trump, fairy tales about Trump, and great expectations for Trump. Hatred for the opponents of Trump, unfair generalized stereotypes about Muslims, and of course, fear of communist subversion everywhere. Jones used to educate people about the left-right paradigm. Now he's doing exactly what he knows to be false and misleading. Anything against the left is now classified as good, even internment camps, which Alex had talked about in the past a lot. He made documentaries about these internment camps and other police state measures. And Jones has been heavily promoting folks like Posobiec, Tommy Robinson, Laura Loomer, and so on, people who are or were connected to the aforementioned elite Zionist billionaire donors. Jones even contemplated hiring them. Needless to say, a number of classic conspiracy buffs were not amused. So then we have this clip here. We embedded this in our story on eng.recenter.com, this video of No More News being a guest on one of these InfoWars shows with Owen Schroyer. So they're arguing back and forth, right? Why is InfoWars promoting these people? Why is InfoWars promoting these individuals who have connections to these Zionist billionaires? And then Schroyer responds, and InfoWars does not have an interest in, it's not interested in this classic fairy tale of a Jewish world conspiracy. So forget the fairy tales about the Rothschilds stealing the British Empire unmolested. Here we have a troublesome network and some very rich guys who are part of the powerful neocon nexus. Did I mention that Jones now sort of kind of promotes Fox News, which belongs to billionaire Rupert Murdoch, who I think happens to be Jewish and Zionist? When Trump first announced his presidential run, InfoWars laughed at this flashy New York mogul who had no conservative credentials whatsoever. They called it a publicity stunt. Further along in the campaign, InfoWars wasn't laughing anymore, but worried that Trump might run outside of the Republican Party, split the conservative vote, and hand the victory to Hillary Clinton. I think you can still find those stories on InfoWars if you look for them. Then the real change happened. InfoWars started to promote Trump as the real deal, the savior of Americana, the shining knight against the leftist deep state conspiracy who had the blessing of God and the Holy Ghost. No credible facts were provided to prove this fairy tale, and nobody really expected Trump to win. The idea was apparently to jump on this hype train, see Trump lose against Hillary with his head held high, and then start a brutal conservative media hype that would last throughout Hillary's presidency. Hyping up the fear would bring in lots of revenue to InfoWars and a possible Trump TV network. Now, of course, Hillary as president would have been fairly dangerous, but it is not really that important who sits in the White House, because you're dealing with an empire and you're dealing with a democracy that is mostly fake and steered. And then Trump won the election, and the fear set in. A narcissist populist in the White House with an alt-right hype train behind him. This would take much of the attention and the money away from InfoWars. No more fear porn. The American public believed that everything was going to be okay. America would come first again, the jobs would come back, and the warmongering would end, and there would be happy cooperation with the Russians, and no more doomsday, no more communist takeover, possibly the end of InfoWars. And new expensive offices had been built by Alex Jones. People were hired, equipment bought. Could they take a financial hit? Could they survive Breitbart and stealing, could they survive Breitbart stealing their thunder? Could they stand their ground during the onslaught of optimistic idiocy and Pepe memes on social media? Could they afford going against the trend and tell the Trump voters it's all a sham and they need to build better structures? I doubt it. A BuzzFeed story quoted some ex-employees of InfoWars anonymously with claims that Jones was horrified at Trump's victory and worried about the future of his company. InfoWars became Trump cheerleaders. Sort of a Fox News for a section of the population that mistrusted Fox during the Bush administration. And then Roger Stone came along, who is now entangled in the Mueller investigation, and once wrote to Jerome Corsi the following, quote, "Tell Rebecca to send us some dollars," end quote. This probably referred to Rebecca Mercer from the influential donor family. And even though we don't have any exact numbers, we can speculate that InfoWars Alex Jones motivated people. InfoWars actually motivated people to go vote for Trump and the Republican Party. We have a rough estimate of the core audience of InfoWars. It's between 2 and 3 million people. And if only 500,000 of these people go out to vote, or if 1 million out of these people go out and vote for Trump and the Republicans, that actually makes a notable difference. So how much money is that worth? What would you think? How much money is it worth to provide 500,000 voters, 1 million voters? How much money is that worth? So InfoWars sells its health supplements and appears to generate decent revenue with them, but is it enough? Especially if Jones loses the lawsuits against the Sandy Hook parents and others. A judge ruled recently that InfoWars must hand out its commercial and marketing information and internal communications. Soon, maybe Jones and his employees will have to make depositions. And it's starting to sound a bit like the Mueller investigation. How long until an employee rolls over and admits something crazy? We don't have any real evidence that Jones takes money from the Mercers or any large donor. And we also do not have evidence that Jones says things for money according to the wishes of donors, large donors. But Jones has flipped on so many topics, it's very concerning. The Russian regime, Trump, Fox, an Iran war possibly, internment camps, the left-right paradigm. If you want insights, today InfoWars is one of the last places you should look. It's generic, it's boring, it's predictable. If something can be spun into a victory for Trump, then spun it will be. If something makes Trump look like a complete puppet and incompetent, there will be some conspiracy theory concocted to paint him as a warrior for the American people and the American cause. In 2013, I filmed Alex Jones at the Bilderberg conference in the UK saying he wants to quasi-retire and be off the air basically by 2018. So he's been busy building up new so-called talent like Owen Schroyer, and he contemplated hiring creeps like Tommy Robinson. If InfoWars gets pounded during the Sandy Hook trials and, loses $20 million or whatever, Jones cannot retire unless he gets bailed out by his fans or some large donors. If he survives financially, he can maybe retire and have his puppets dance in front of the camera for him. So, even if InfoWars never took a dollar directly or indirectly from the Mercer family or the Shulmans or the Rosenwalds, even if they never took a dollar directly or indirectly from these elitist Zionist billionaires, there are still other ways to profit and benefit from those ideas and from those talking points, which are paid for by these billionaires. Because these billionaires, they can create trends. They can create stars like Milo, and they can turn the small venue of Breitbart into this juggernaut during the Trump campaign. These billionaires can create trends, and once a trend is established, more and more people try to copy those trends to stay trendy, to stay successful, or to even become more successful. And at some point, if the trend is strong enough, it would be financially damaging to go against this trend, to tell the audience that this is not a good thing, that these promises will not be fulfilled, that, it's not going to be that simple. If you tell the audience the truth, if you tell them what reality is, as best as possible, if you tell the audience that, the audience might turn away from you. They might actually just click, open up a new tab, or start a new search on YouTube, and these people in the audience, they will go somewhere else and find somebody who tells them what they want to hear. And of course it creates attention and a buzz if Tommy Robinson is a guest on the Alex Jones show. Of course, there's several ways how you can profit and benefit from a trend like this. And that's a scary thing. So legitimate people out there might end up forgotten, or they will never become larger. Legitimate people in the media, they might see their funds dry out because people tend to go where the money is. People tend to go where the buzz is. And if an artificial buzz is created through these billionaires, then this money will attract new money, and it will attract more people, and more people will attract more people. It's a very simple. There's a very simple way that how this works. Okay, so be very careful with media out there, and you have to understand that it doesn't take much money to create trends, and it doesn't take much to maintain these trends. Now, we've heard that the Trump campaign actually benefited from psychometrics. They were researching how Americans were thinking, different American groups were thinking, what they wanted, what they demand, what they want to see, what could make them vote for Donald Trump or the Republican Party. And the results of that research said people want a wall, or they want a very clear-cut migration policy. People wanted to end those foreign entanglements, foreign wars, and all that. And the Trump campaign pretty much just copied those research results verbatim and put that into tweets, put that into a platform, a program. And of course, when it came to realize that platform, when it came to realize that agenda, of course, things changed and things became more complicated. And oh my God, it's going to take time. And oh, we can't do this. And it's because of the left. And so there is no wall yet. And maybe Trump will now get a compromise with the Democrats. It's not going to be a long concrete wall. It's maybe just new fences, and it's maybe just some steel wall, but not a whole lot. And if Trump got money for a real wall, he would probably get reelected. But yeah, so that's what they were going for, right? It's this idea, this wrong idea that Hillary Clinton was defeated, and the deep state was supposedly defeated by InfoWars and Pepe memes on social media. And of course, that's a pretty serious illusion. Now, remember the times when InfoWars had guests on, such as Greg Palast. Greg Palast, who documented the vote fraud benefiting George W. Bush twice. You know, the voting tricks and the scheming and those kind of things. Now, Greg Palast had something very similar to report after Trump had won the elections, and then the Republican Party had won the elections. Greg Palast was reporting about the same methods and the same tricks and the same dirty stuff going on, but suddenly Greg Palast didn't appear anymore on the Alex Jones show. And people became very silent about this sort of thing. And even the left wasn't talking that much about it. They created some buzz about manipulation, about vote fraud. Some buzz, like they always do, but then it dies down very quickly, and you know, maybe some little recounting is done, but that's it, and end of story. And we have to expect media, alternative media, we have to expect alternative media to be truly independent, to be not too close to the White House, to be not so weird. We do have to demand this. Now, is Alex Jones going to become more popular in the future? Is he going to be less popular in the future? Will he lose a ton of money? Will he gain a ton of money? Will he be bailed out by his fans? Will he be bailed out by the Mercers? We will have to wait and see about that. We'll just have to wait and see. And once you've worked in alternative media for, let's say, 5 years or 10 years. Now, I've been doing this for 15 years, mostly in the German-speaking world. But if you work in this, let's call it an industry, profession, whatever. If you work in this profession for 5 years or 10 years, you will meet, on the one hand, great people in the audience. There's tons of great people in the audience. But usually you will meet some very, very crazy and very evil people who are doing media, who have an audience, who have a platform. So usually the audience is great, but those gurus are usually terrible. Absolutely terrible. Oftentimes mentally ill. It's usually narcissism and these things, and there's tons of alcohol abuse and drug abuse. And it's a Shark Tank. It's a very, very nasty industry. It's a very, very nasty environment. So people act real nice when they want something out of you, and they try to benefit from you. They try to take part of your audience or whatever. They act very nice, but they usually have an agenda, and there's going to be a betrayal most of the time, and there's some very, very nasty fighting going on behind the scenes. And sometimes you see that in public, sometimes you see some of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes, but it's very nasty. And of course, over the many years of Alex Jones's career, of course, you've had people who were nasty, who were evil, who just tried to take his spot, who tried to steal his thunder, to take away part of his audience. People oftentimes did this out of greed and out of narcissism and arrogance, and I understand that. But Jones is not an angel either. In fact, during one of his court cases, it was said that he is actually narcissistic. And we see his behavior, especially over the last few years, and things that came out, and information from many different points and places and such. So yeah, to be fair, to offer you some basic disclosure, yes, I am in competition with Alex Jones. I compete in terms of ideas. I compete for the audience. I could have chosen to just go along, to just parrot what they say, to make those changes myself, the kind of changes that they've made. They flipped on so many positions. I could have just adopted those trends, the new right, the alt-right, just parroting, riding this wave, riding this trend until it's over, and then jumping on the next trend. I've been a guest on the Alex Jones Show a few times when Paul Watson was hosting, and I could have simply just gone along with that program, gone along with that line, and I could have profited from that, but I chose not, and I still choose not to do that. Okay, I think many people are disappointed in InfoWars. Many people are looking for something new, something scientific, something a lot more constructive, and I'm doing my best to do that kind of a job, to do the best possible job. So I read a ton of books. I try to be fair. I try to go beyond simple ideological convictions and look at these topics individually. And I don't try to explain everything through ideology, because that simply does not work. So yeah, we'll see how this Alex Jones thing plays out, or if he generally loses the sort of classic conspiracy audience, if he just becomes sort of a Fox News for younger people with a slight conspiracy angle. We don't know what the actual demographics of his audience looks like these days. We don't have any detailed statistic lying in front of me, but Alex Jones made these choices, and he will have to live with that. And I made very different choices. If you enjoyed this video, please comment down below. Tell me what you think, and please try to be constructive. You know, present facts and logic. That's what this is about. And subscribe to this channel, support us on Patreon, and spread our clips on social media.